They would talk about that night for years afterward, though never in the same way, and never with the same certainty. Some of the men swore they remembered the sound first, a low, rhythmic thud that didn't match any animal they knew. Others insisted it was the silence that struck them, the way the forest seemed to hold its breath as if waiting for something to step out from behind the trees. But all of them agreed on one thing: the prints they found that night were too large, too deep, and too deliberate to belong to anything human. And once they saw them, nothing about that patrol felt routine anymore. It began in the early hours before dawn, when the world is still half asleep and shadows cling to the ground like living things. The patrol had been sent out to investigate reports from local villagers, strange noises echoing through the valley, livestock disappearing without a trace, and a lingering sense that something was moving through the forest that didn't belong there. Most soldiers dismissed it as superstition, the kind of folklore that grows in isolated places where the line between myth and memory blurs. But the men on this patrol had learned long ago that fear doesn't come from stories, it comes from the things you can't explain. The forest was dense, the kind of place where branches knit together overhead and block out the sky. Their boots sank into damp soil, and every step released the scent of pine and earth. The squad leader, Sergeant Hale, moved with the quiet confidence of someone who had spent half his life in places like this. He didn't believe in monsters or legends, but he believed in patterns, and something about the reports didn't fit the usual ones. Animals don't take livestock without leaving tracks. People don't move through forests without being seen. And fear doesn't spread through a village unless something is feeding it. As they pushed deeper into the woods, the air grew colder. Not the natural chill of early morning, but something sharper, almost metallic. Private Ortiz noticed it first. He slowed, rubbing his arms as if trying to shake off a sudden shiver. "Feels wrong here," he muttered, barely loud enough for anyone to hear. Hale shot him a look, not unkind, but firm. "Stay focused," he said. "We're almost at the ridge." The ridge was where the villagers claimed to hear the noises: heavy footsteps, snapping branches, and once a scream that didn't sound like any animal they knew. The patrol reached it just as the first light of dawn began to seep through the trees. And when Corporal Jensen stopped so abruptly that the man behind him nearly collided with him. Sergeant Jensen whispered, "You need to see this." At first, Hale thought it was just another animal track. The forest floor was full of them: deer, boar, even the occasional wolf. But as he stepped closer, he felt his breath catch in his throat. The print was enormous, easily twice the size of a man's boot. The edges were sharp, the depth impossibly deep, as if whatever made it weighed far more than anything that should be walking on two legs. And that was the other thing: it was two-legged. The shape was unmistakable. Hal crouched beside it, running his fingers along the edge. The soil was compressed in a way he had never seen before. "What the hell?" he murmured. Behind him, the men shifted uneasily, their earlier confidence evaporating like mist. Then they found the second print, the third, a trail leading deeper into the forest. The men exchanged glances, each one silently, hoping someone else would suggest turning back. But Hale stood, his jaw tightening. "We follow it," he said. "Whatever this is, it's been coming too close to the village. We need to know what we're dealing with." They moved cautiously now, weapons raised, senses sharpened. The prints continued in a straight line, spaced far apart, as if whatever made them had a stride longer than any human. The forest grew darker, the trees thicker, the air heavier. Even the birds seemed to avoid this part of the woods. The only sound was the crunch of leaves beneath their boots and the distant echo of something moving just out of sight. At one point, Ortiz stopped again. "Sergeant, do you hear that?" Hale listened. First he heard nothing. Then, faintly, a low rumble. Not quite a growl, not quite a breath, but something in between. It vibrated through the ground, subtle but unmistakable. The men tightened their grips on their rifles. The trail led them to a clearing, a wide circle of flattened grass and broken branches. Something had been here recently, something large. The prints circled the clearing, as if whatever it was had paced around the perimeter. Hale felt a knot form in his stomach. Predators circled like this. They watched, they waited. Then they found the tree, It stood at the far edge of the clearing, its bark shredded by deep claw marks that reached far higher than any man could reach. The gouges were fresh, sap still oozing from the wounds. Jensen stepped back, his face pale. "Sergeant, it's nothing that big lives out here." Hale didn't answer. He didn't have to. The truth was written across every man's face. The rumble came again, louder this time, closer. The ground trembled beneath their feet. The men formed a defensive circle, eyes scanning the tree line. The forest seemed to close in around them, every shadow suddenly alive, every rustle a threat. Hale's heart pounded in his chest, but his voice remained steady. "Stay sharp. Don't fire unless you see a target." For a moment, the world held still. The wind stopped. The forest fell silent. Even the air felt frozen. Then, from somewhere deep within the trees, came a sound that none of them would ever forget. A long, guttural roar that didn't belong to any creature known to science. It echoed through the clearing, shaking leaves from branches and sending a chill down every spine. The men didn't run. They couldn't. Fear rooted them to the ground. But the roar didn't come again. Instead, the forest slowly returned to life, as if whatever made the sound had moved on, or was waiting. Hale made the call. "We're heading back," he said quietly. "We've seen enough." They followed their own tracks out of the forest, each man glancing over his shoulder more times than he cared to admit. The prints remained behind them, a silent reminder that some things in the world defy explanation. Some things live in the spaces between myth and reality, where stories are born and fear takes shape. The villagers never reported livestock disappearing again. The sounds faded away, and the forest fell silent. But the men who went on that patrol never forgot what they saw or what they heard. And though they never found the creature, they all agreed on one thing. Whatever made those prints was still out there, watching, waiting, and far too large to be human.